Did you get it today?
Yes, and
Oh,
there's just no good time to get it, right? And so I was, yeah. So welcome everyone. I'm really delighted to see everybody. We're going to start with the roll, if I could.
Yes, good afternoon. Madam Chair, because of the number of seats and the number of alternates, this may take just a moment, so I just ask your indulgence while we go through by seat number.
Thank you.
Chairperson Chavez.
Here.
Seat number 2, Sheriff Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Seat number 3, Member Tomalinas.
Here.
Seat number 4, Member Zahner. Seat number 5, Jeff Smith or Key Lee.
Here.
Thank you. Seat number 6, Chief Garnett.
Here.
Seat number 7, Dr. Cody or Rhonda McClinton Brown.
Present. Rhonda's here.
Thank you. Seat number 8, Councilmember Esparza. Seat number 9, Molly O'Neill or Damon Silver.
I'm here, David. I'm appearing for Molly today.
Thank you. Seat number 10, DA Rosen or David Angel.
Hi, Terry Harmon, appearing on behalf of DA Jeff Rosen.
Thank you very much. Seat number 11, Member Nikolai.
Here.
Thank you. Seat number 12, Member Minakuchi or alternate Member Shing.
Here.
Thank you. Seat number 13, Member Terrell. Seat number 14, Member Mills. Seat number 15, Member Dewan or alternate Member Olmos.
Jessica Banderas here for Dr. Dewan.
Thank you. Seat number 16, Member Gaxiola.
Call may be recorded for quality purposes.
Seat number 17, Member Fisk or alternate Member Reagan.
Michaeline Regan, here.
Thank you. Seat number 18, Miguel Marquez or Casey Alcon.
Here.
I'm
Thank
here
you.
as well.
Thank you. We'll note that in the minutes. Seat number 19, Member O'Brien.
Here.
Seat number 20, Member Amador Lebeau or alternate Member Trinidad. Seat number 21, Member Williams or alternate Member Yee. I believe Member Williams is here. You're muted, sir.
Williams is here.
Thank you very much. Seat number 22, Member Clifford.
Here.
Seat 23, Member Manley.
Here.
Seat 24, Member Hernandez. Seat 25, Member Day or alternate Member Purumatam.
Here.
Thank you. Is that Dr. Day? It
Yes.
is. Thank you. Seat number 26, Member Crocker Cook or alternate Member Mukayama.
Mary Cook is here.
Thank you. I believe alternate Member Mukayama is also here. Seat number 27, Member Virginie or alternate Member Brahim. I thought we had alternate Member Brahim here. We'll come back. Seat number 28, Member Mata or alternate Member Joseph. All right, 29 is vacant. Seat number 30, Member Miranda. Seat number 31, Member Kendrick. Seat number 32, Supervisor Ellenberg. She is not here. Okay. I would like to go back and see if there's anybody that I missed. If you could please let me know.
Key Lee is here.
Lee is here. I have him. Thank you.
And
Jermaine Hardy.
Jermaine.
And I joined late as well, Sherry Terrell with Behavioral Health.
Thank you. I have Sherry Terrell here. Jermaine Hardy. Just a moment, please, while I find Mr. Hardy's seat number. Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, give me just one moment to total up and see if we have a quorum.
And I see Member Brahim here as well.
Member Brahim, you said is here as well?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you for your patience. You do have a quorum.
Great. Thank you. Thanks all. I know this is a big committee and that one of the longest things we do is vote. So thank you. I really appreciate all that. We're going to now go to public comment. This is an opportunity to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, but within the purview of this committee. I see no hands raised. I'll confirm with the clerk.
That is confirmed. We have no hands raised.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to the committee to review our agenda. So we have a big agenda and we're going to put some of our items on consent, but I want to walk through what those are and see if there are any concerns or issues that anybody would like to raise about these items. Item 8 is to accept the Board of Supervisors finding about continued remote meetings, and that just allows us to continue to have these meetings remotely. Item 9 is the minutes from our February meeting. Item 10 is a report from the CEO relating to the budget proposals from county departments and these are particularly reform and jail diversion. And colleagues, the reason that I asked for this to be made public was to sunshine this both with the public, but also with all of you. So that's why I put that on consent as long as folks had a chance to review it. Item 11 is to approve the 2-year adult reentry strategic implementation plan and forward a favorable recommendation to the board. Item 12 is a report from the public defender relating to their work on PAR. And item 13 is the reentry resource statistics. What that leaves on our agenda is item 4, which is the report of the Office of the Sheriff relating to the gender-based assessment of female inmates. And then item 5, receiving the a report from the Office of the County Exec and other departments relating to the implementation efforts focused on high-need women leaving county jail. And item 6 is a behavioral health item that relates to the services that are being provided for diversion. And then item 7 is the behavioral health services relating to the My Avatar integration with county contracted providers. So we have a meaty agenda. And so I just want to share why we put what we put on consent, and also to say to my colleagues that often I put items on consent that I just don't have questions about. And I'm comfortable with. So items 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, I'm recommending for consent. Would anybody like to take any item off of the consent calendar? Okay, I see no hands from my colleagues. With that, I'm then going to ask for a motion for the consent calendar and changes. Yeah, motion for the consent calendar.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Chief Garnett. A second from, thank you. I think that was from Judge Manley. Thank you so much. And I'm now going to ask Dave if you can call the roll on the consent calendar.
Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Sheriff Smith.
Yes.
Member Tomalinas.
Yes.
Member Lee.
Yes.
Member Garnett.
Yes.
Member McClinton Brown.
Yes.
Member Silver.
Yes.
Member Nikolai.
Yes.
Member Shing. Member Shing?
Yes, it's Bob. Yes.
Thank you. Member Terrell.
Yes.
Member Reagan.
Yes.
Member Marquez.
Yes.
Member O'Brien.
Yes.
Member Williams.
Yes.
Member Clifford.
Yes.
Member Manley.
Yes.
Member Day.
Yes.
Member Crocker Cook.
Yes.
Thank you. That's everybody, Madam Chair. I think we're all set.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item 4, and this is a report from the Office of the Sheriff relating to the gender responsive jail assessment. You may recall at our last meeting, I was very interested in getting the Sheriff's Office perspective on what they would like to prioritize. The report was very well done, very meaty, and I was very interested in us getting timelines and the resources that are required for implementation. And so that we, and any mechanisms that we have for report backs so that we better understand the effectiveness of the tasks that we'll be taking on. And with that, Sheriff Smith, may I turn it to you?
Yes, thank you. So for item 5, we have Lieutenant Rowland who'll be presenting, but also on the line, in case we have any questions on any other items like number 5, we have Assistant Sheriff Dave Sepulveda, Captain Thomas Duran, Lieutenant Gurpreet Gill, and obviously Lieutenant Rowland and Laura McCabe. So in case you have any other further questions, they're here and available. But I would like to turn it over to Lieutenant Rowland, who will present this on the gender needs assessment. Lieutenant?
Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for allowing us to update you on the Gender Responsive Project. Again, my name is Rita Rowland, and I am the Administrative Liaison Lieutenant for the Elmwood Women's Facility. I also have later who will help is Laura McCabe, who is a Program Manager with the Sheriff's Administration. As you're aware, the Sheriff's Office recently contracted with the Moss Group to conduct a gender needs assessment of the women in our care. The results of that assessment were presented to this group in February. Since that time, the Sheriff's Office has worked consistently with the Moss Group to review the recommendations to identify priorities. The Moss Group has stated that with the foundational strengths identified, they are confident that the Sheriff's Office can address its challenges. Today, we will share the priority items that have been identified thus far. I'm thinking about how we could support the well-being of women, and we considered 3 items that fall in these categories: physical environment, programs and services, staff growth and development. For physical environment, the physical space in which we live is a reflection of our health and well-being. It has a direct impact on our outlook, mood, and attitude. For the women in our care day to day, the physical confines of the space in which they live is very important to providing them with a healing space, offering them structure, and giving them some control of their environment. This category includes items such as routine cleaning and maintenance of the space, as well as restructured living spaces and enhanced programmed areas. For programs and services, it is vital that we not only expand the programming opportunities available to women, but also that we ensure that women are connected to the programs and services we offer. Our programs and services must support the needs of women who stay within our facility. They must also provide a base upon which women can build support for life outside of our facility. This category includes expanding partnerships with entities who can provide information on topics of interest to women, such as nutrition and exercise programs. For staff growth and development area, and thinking about how to better support the needs of women in our care, it is important that our staff has the knowledge, expertise, and skills necessary to provide that support. Therefore, it is essential for our staff to have an understanding of the needs of women within our care so they can provide a supportive environment in which the women can heal. Additional staff training is needed for gender responsive and trauma-informed care. Although we call this category staff growth and development, it incorporates much more. It begins with developing a mission and vision statement for the facility through which we clarify our future directions and incorporate them in our policies. We arrange our items into short, mid, and long-term timelines. Our short-term covers items that could be started right away up to 2 years. Short-term items include simpler items like cleaning and items which provide a foundation for mid and long-term goals, like development of gender-responsive training. In order to implement our short-term items, the Sheriff's Office will need funding for supplies, training development, technical assistance, and additional staffing. In general, those items that were identified in midterm are those items which can take 2 to 4 years to complete. Long-term items will take up to 5 or more to complete. Mid and long-term items are generally dependent upon outside entities and/or will require additional staffing and funding. As we move forward through the implementation process, the Sheriff's Office will solicit input from the women regarding the changes. Women will have the opportunity to participate by completing surveys through Inmate Advisory Council and potential follow-up studies. This body of work is an ongoing process. It includes other stakeholders, and the work is still in progress. Thank you for allowing us this time to share. We are available for questions.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm going to first go to the public to see if there are any comments or questions. I mean, if folks would like to raise their hands. I see no hands raised from the public. I'll confirm with the clerk.
That's confirmed, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dave. And then I'm going to come back to the board and see if there are any comments or questions on this particular report. All right. Miguel?
Thanks. And thanks for this report. Yeah, I think these are all really good ideas to move the ball forward. There were a couple, though, that struck me when I read it through them. I'm supportive of all of them, but one said, the very first one on short terms, improve the physical environment of the facility with the goal of increasing cleanliness of the unit to support healthy habits. And I just think that that should be not just in women's areas, but in all areas. I think we have a duty to all of our inmate population to try and provide cleanliness and the products that they need. And the others are all gender specific, which made a lot of sense. And again, I'm so very supportive of them. But one other one that I thought could also be more broadly applied is communication between inmates and staff and management and executive management. I mean, I think communication always helps. So I think that, we should focus, of course, on, given the particular goal with this timeline and task work plan, focus on women, but what we learn from that, we should apply it more generally. Thanks.
And I don't know if the staff has any thoughts on what Miguel just raised.
Are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
Okay. Hi, this is Assistant Sheriff David Sepulveda. Yeah, we're in a total agreement with that. We actually have implemented partnerships with FAF to do deep dive cleaning, and that's kind of what we're really focusing on. Is on our end is the deep dive cleaning, where we're actually bringing in outside sources to do some of the serious deep cleaning. At the same time, we do have a program right now. It's at the Elmwood facility. We have a janitorial supervisor whose goal is to actually show the inmates in their areas how to do the proper style and proper cleaning. So that's going to expand both throughout Elmwood and to the men's facility, the main jail facility. But refocusing back on our work, our recent work with FAF, we've already implemented several painting and floor resurfacing projects that are already making a big difference. So we agree with that 100%.
Thank you. Christine, and then Cora.
Thank you. I was just wondering about the IAC being mentioned. It's my understanding that at least out at Main Jail, I know there hasn't been IAC for some time, mainly due to COVID. But I was wondering if there were plans to reinstitute IAC throughout all the facilities, and if it's still not possible because of contamination or exposure difficulties, if it somehow could be managed through Zoom meetings, that the detainees be able to communicate through the IAC.
Yeah, absolutely. The IAC was really important to us when we had it ongoing. If it wasn't for COVID, we'd still be in full active IAC mode. Our plan is to reactivate those groups, and of course at the women's facility as well. We are just being super cautious right now. Today was the first day. I noted that we had 0 COVID positive inmates in custody. So as we go forward with these great numbers that we have, we're reinstituting all those types of programs, and most definitely will include the IAC.
Thank you. Cora?
Yes, maybe I just didn't hear it again, but I agree with Miguel. I think that the work plan is great. I'm just frustrated that nothing is ever mentioned at all in the reports about what we do with the basic need of visitation, especially childcare, right? And I do think that it is a need that are specific, well, not specific, but especially with mummies, right? we have mommies in jail as well. And nothing is ever mentioned about what do we do with that?
Thank you for that. Who could I turn to for some perspective on that from the
Basic need childcare.
Yeah.
Okay. Visiting is ongoing. We're working right now on childcare programming. It's a little early in the process to give any specific detailed information, but we know that our focus. We have Lieutenant Gill here from the programs unit, who might give us a little bit of insight on what we're working on with that.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Lieutenant Gill with the programs unit. Just wanted to fill you in. We're in the early stages of developing. It's already been developed, but it's too soon to say. We're looking to replace the PAC program with families coming together. It's going to have a visitation component in it. It's going to have the family reunification component in it. And we're in the early stages of discussing with the provider that we're looking at to potentially engage for these services. On the back end, we're also in the process of developing an additional program in collaboration with some of our providers that are already providing services, where it's going to be called Homework or Homework Corner, where we're going to be utilizing the technology that we have in place in terms of having the virtual platform to reconnect and have parents give parents the opportunity to conduct and do homework with their children. So we're in the process of developing that program as well, and we can definitely report back to the board once we have additional information on that.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, as a member, I would like to call for that report as soon as it's ready, please.
Of course. Thank you. Any other questions on this area? All right. So colleagues, I just want to say how really excited I am about this moving forward. And thank you so much, Sheriff Smith, to you and your staff for the responses. I think this is very much moving in a very good direction. What I'd like to do is ask that we put this, we'll ask Otto Lee if we can put this on the FGOC agenda in May. And that way, as we're looking at the, well, let me just add that we can look at the initial assessment for implementation in short, medium, and long term, but also be able to have that discussion relative to resources that are available. So if we can, what that really means is taking this report, putting it on that agenda with the slide presentation that was presented today, which I think is very helpful. And if there are any refinements that the staff wants to make before then relative to resources that may be required, that if you could just include those as well, since we're going to be talking about budget in June. Does that make sense to Sheriff Smith?
Yes, it does. And thank you for mentioning resources, because we certainly have difficulty with staffing levels, but we can. And I really want to commend our staff for taking on the project and how seriously they're looking at it. And I think a lot can be translated to the men's side too. So again, thanks to our staff. We have resource staffing issues. So thank you.
Yeah, and actually that is a really good point, as Miguel raised earlier. You know, what we learn in terms of one body of work really should be transferred to the other. I think that's a really, really good point. So with that, colleagues, if there's no concerns about that, I'll just on all of our behalf make a request that we agendize that. We'll ask Supervisor Lee if that's okay with him to do from staff to staff. And then we may want to touch back on some of these issues because the next area is also about women. So I really appreciate having so much of the staff available here to us today. So with that, we're going to move then to item 5. And item 5 is a report relating to the implementation of efforts on placement for high needs women leaving county jail.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Chavez. I'm going to be presenting this to begin, and then we have representatives from all of our partner departments on the meeting, and they'll be available to answer questions at the end of the presentation. So today I will be providing you with a short presentation on placement efforts for high needs women leaving county jail. I did want to make sure to acknowledge and mention the high level of multidisciplinary collaboration that has gone into the project thus far. To meaningfully address this population, the Office of the County Executive, Office of the Sheriff, Office of Reentry Services and Women's Policy, Office of Pretrial Services, Probation, Behavioral Health, and Custody Health have all been meeting on an ongoing basis to discuss how best to serve this population within Santa Clara County. And each of those departments' input was critical to this report and to the work ongoing. Next slide, please. So what you see in front of you is the proposed service work plan that was presented to the Board of Supervisors on December 15th of 2020. And you can kind of read through the different bullet points on the slide, but I will summarize to say, as you can read in the top row, in-custody service coordination really starts with the Sheriff's Office and Custody Health. These departments work closely together to first identify a woman who could fit into the definition of high needs, and then do some coordination of services within the jail. Custody Health also then works closely with Behavioral Health to provide care in custody and to begin the discharge planning when they're leaving custody. Once a woman is determined to be discharged, Behavioral Health, Office of Reentry, and the Office of Women's Policy will work together to ensure the necessary care coordination. The last point here is one that we'll talk about in greater detail in the next slide. But in the ideal work plan, these departments will work together to analyze the data and ensure that all the participants are matched with services to meet their individual needs. And this is commonly referred to as multidisciplinary case conferencing. Next slide, Amanda. So as I mentioned, we did run into some information sharing challenges, which the team has been working diligently to try to resolve with the input of County Council. And I do believe that Kavita Narayan is on this call and available to take questions. But again, to conduct a service coordination, it requires the need to share both very sensitive criminal justice and health-related information. The reasoning for the criminal justice information is part of the identification of the high needs population has to do with potentially violent or aggressive behavior. And so that can be prior violent conduct, either in custody or out, arrest history, current charges, and any previous history, again, of that kind of conduct in or out of custody, which can fall into legally protected information for criminal justice information. Health-related information can include mental health, diagnoses, prescriptions and treatment, and also substance abuse. Again, both types of information are legally protected and require informed client consent to be shared with another department. So we are working closely with County Council. We've had County Council engaged with some of our individual departments, and moving forward, one of the recommendations, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is to have County Council more actively engaged with the work group so that we can solve some of these issues in real time around data sharing. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of a complicated slide, and I did want to review it with you, but there are a myriad of services that are available to women when they're in custody. So as you can see, Custody Health provides a range of services and can make referrals to any of these programs when there is an identified need. Again, treatment begins in custody, and while a woman is in custody, she will have access to counseling, to medication, and to Sheriff's Office resource officers. You'll notice that they can provide referrals for rehabilitative care, education programming, facilitation services for vocation, and also transitional. Prior to discharge, Custody Health does connect the client with all relevant resources as part of their discharge plan and a 30-day discharge prescription, referrals to community programs as needed, and they will do a warm handoff to Behavioral Health, who is generally responsible for the woman's care once she exits custody. Next slide, please. So once a woman is out of custody, she will be connected again to one of the many service programs that Behavioral Health works with, and these are both treatment and support programs. The legislative file in your packet does have more information on these programs, so you can take a look at those or certainly ask us any questions that you might have at the end. If a woman is placed on formal probation, the probation department has specialized units to match the client with the individual need. And probation also has services, again, in place for this population of high needs women as well. There is an attachment similar to behavioral health that outlines the various programs that probation connects with and supervises that might be able to meet the needs of this population. The Office of Reentry Services, as many of you know, has client or service navigators, and they can help actually walk these women through the services and connect them via warm handoff to many of the community-based services that these women will need to access to be able to maintain a path of safety and to thrive and to, again, stay out of custody ideally. And so this is through their Gender Opportunities for Women, or also known as GROW. And that's, again, a gender-specific service navigation platform that the Office of Reentry Services utilizes. Next slide. So this is a brief overview of some of the recommendations that we think would be helpful to move this work forward. So first, we would like to recommend that Office of Reentry Services as the main coordinator of this body of work once a woman leaves custody, really sort of, we think they're best positioned to work with relevant stakeholders and to lead the work group moving forward. We also will continue to work with County Council to develop the necessary client consent forms. I think it's important to note in this recommendation that when we say consent, we do mean informed consent, because some of these women might be entering into custody and maybe actively on a substance, they may be having a mental health crisis. And so determining where that informed consent comes into play when women are stabilized, either on medication or with treatment, and are in a place where they can actively consent to having this information shared. So this is an important part of that process, that informed consent. And again, we will have County Council involved in the work group moving forward. And then these consents will be used to do the active case conferencing, which can allow for more streamlined services, but allow for more targeted services to really track these women as they move through the different programs. Because right now, while after talking to the departments, we have a lot of faith that these women are getting excellent services from our county and community-based programming, there are some concerns about how we track these women through these different services, again, because of those sort of siloed way of the information sharing and the legality around it. Third, we are considering developing an identification marker within relevant county databases to alert the departments when women meet the qualification of high needs. Further refining that definition and making sure all of the departments have a similar definition is really critical to this work. Because there were some questions that came up about, well, what is violent behavior? What are the penal code sections? Does there have to be penal code sections? Could this just be self-reported? Or could this be behavior that's witnessed in custody? There was also some question about different diagnoses, what diagnoses may fit within the definition of high needs and what may not. So again, refining that definition, making it very clear across departments so that we can track these women as they move through the system and hopefully target services more effectively. We also want to make sure that we're capturing the data on the other side. So both identifying this population, but also capturing the data for how these women are moving through, what services they're utilizing, if they're cycling back through. One of the common agreements and discussions we had is that some of the behavior of these women very closely mimics the behavior of victims, which is not uncommon given the fact that many of our women in custody are going to have victimization experience. They're going to be prior victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, child sexual abuse. And so this, cycling in and out of services as they sort of exit power and control wheels and recover some empowerment is a cycle that many of us are very common. It's a common cycle we see with victimization. So being really sensitive to that, recognizing the victimization pathways, acknowledging it and targeting those services. And again, sort of seeing how they come through the system and what services they're utilizing and not, so that we can better target the services for this population. So I know that was a lot of information to share with all of you. Again, we have representatives on this call who are available to take questions. And with that, I'll conclude and say we're happy to answer any questions that you or any other members of Reentry may have.
Thank you. I'm going to first go to the public and see if there are any comments from the public. I see no hands raised. Confirm with Dave.
That is confirmed, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public component. I'll come to us, to the committee, and I'll start with Wes and then go to Christine.
Am I a mute or?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. There's no mention of spirituality in this. I think as a lay Buddhist chaplain, I've done a lot of work on both the women's side and the men's side. There's no recognition of that at all. I think recently, and we're trying to work with custody health and others to bring in, for example, there was a suicide in February, and I was pointing out that mental health should work with the inmates and maybe some of the guards as to the reaction of that. And I did a lot of that with two of his friends, but I haven't seen any follow-up. I think those are very important. Spirituality and religion or faith-based in the jail is a very important aspect of healing for a lot of these guys and women. So I didn't hear anything about that in her report. So I would like to point that out to you, Chair, to the chair.
Thanks,
Thank
Wes. Any feedback from the staff on that perspective?
I think that's a great point. And I know we have Javier on the call and also representatives from our behavioral health services. I don't know if you'd like to talk a little bit about the faith-based programming that you have available for women out of custody.
Sure. So in partnership with the Behavioral Health Services Department, we have the 4 faith-based centers that if an individual is interested in being engaged with the faith centers, they are engaged here through the Reentry Center. Also, the faith-based centers staff the resource table upon release at Elmwood lobby in the mornings and the evenings, Monday through Thursday. And then if an individual is interested in any of the faith-based services, the rehab officers and the Sheriff's Programs Unit are equipped to also make direct referrals to the faith-based. And I think it might be under the category under the services that in custody provides, but I know the chaplaincy has programming in custody as well. But in terms of faith-based services, those are provided in collaboration with behavioral health.
Thank you, Javier. Christine?
Thanks. And thank you for this report. I really appreciate it. And I think you addressed what I was going to ask in your last statement about the disproportionate number of women who are victims of sexual and physical abuse and childhood trauma. And I was wondering where that's folded in exactly in their stay. Are they identified quickly upon coming in? How does this process take place that the person in custody is recognized as needing those sorts of services? And since that's such an overwhelming thing, can you describe a little bit about how that's woven into all programming for women?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start up with a few comments, then likely rely on some of our partners in our criminal justice agencies. But prior to working in the CEO's office, I was the director of victim services. And so this issue is very close to my heart. And I think something that is a very important discussion for us to have about how high, like we think of the dichotomy between victim and offender as something that is separate and mutually exclusive. That's not true across all genders, but particularly not true when we think about our female victims and our offenders in custody. Many of them are going to have prior victimization, and just the act of being in custody can be triggering for many of them. Many of our victims are going to come out of relationships that have power and control issues, right? Sexual violence, non-autonomy over your body, non-autonomy over your own decision-making. When you enter into custody, by nature of the custodial and carceral process, some of that power and control, again, is imposed upon you to keep you safe, to keep your other inmates safe, to keep the staff safe. And so I think that's something that, the gender responsiveness work that we heard about, I know it's something that the Sheriff's Office is deeply committed to and working on. I believe that Custody Health feels similarly. And there were a lot of conversations about how to integrate trauma-informed care and assessment within this work, how to identify those trigger points, how to be sensitive to our women coming into custody. So as much as we can, we talk a lot about victims outside in the world, that we don't want to re-traumatize them through the criminal justice process. I think that is true of our female offenders. We do not want to re-traumatize them through this process, right? So I think that, I'll rely on the experts, really, Dr. Day, and anyone from the Sheriff's Office who would like to comment. But I do believe in having these conversations. They're very conscious of looking at trauma-informed care, getting these women's services if they disclose. and making sure that it's something that the team is aware of when they're working with these women. And again, to your point, just to recognize that this is a complicated issue for women who find themselves in custody because of that natural trigger.
So Erica, Dr. Day, did you want to respond?
Sure. And to the point of trauma, we are looking at trauma-informed, gender-responsive, gender-informed care. Part of that, working with the MOS group, we have been very intricately involved in the MOS group, but I've worked with them before in other venues to provide trauma-informed and gender-responsive care. To Wes's point, we also have worked with our pastoral chaplains, and we have just recently did a presentation on the trauma-informed pastoral care and working with the women in that. We worked with Chaplain Liz, as well as Wes, has some presentations with our clinicians here. They provided their curriculum and their programming for that, and so we're encompassing that as well. But as far as a gender-responsive, gender-informed care, we're looking at utilizing the ACE, which is an adverse childhood exposure experiences tool, where it's a 10-question tool, which is pretty, it's an evidence-based tool where if you get 6 or more, you can pretty much dictate how women behave in correctional settings, as well as any adverse triggers that we may be unintentionally triggering when we're providing care. So we're looking at those as well.
And I would just, Sheriff Smith, I don't know if you want anyone on your team to respond to this.
Go ahead, Gil.
So I'll go ahead and take that question. Thank you for the question, Supervisor Chavez. The foundation, the very foundation of all programming that we currently have being offered in custody is trauma-informed and trauma-informed services. Primarily, we work with service providers and we provide after we make the initial connect. We go ahead and work hand in glove with our other partners, Custody Behavioral Health, Custody Health, and Office of Reentry Services.
Yeah, and let me just add a piece to this, because I want to be very clear with what I'm about to say, Christine, as far as why we're having this conversation. I think we know that we don't yet have the answers about how to support people while they're in custody in all of the facets that we're talking about, and how we transition the services they're getting in custody to when they're out of custody. That's the whole reason we're having this discussion. And so what I would say is that I think we're all becoming much more aware of it. I think the bigger question that you're asking, and I think it's a great point that Dr. Day raised about if, whether or not when women are coming into custody, whether or not that ACE screening is given to everybody right when they come in. And I actually don't know the answer to that. Dr. Day, do they get that right when they come in, or maybe the sheriff's office will know that?
Currently, it is not being given.
Okay, so what I would say is that we as a group want to weigh in on this, because we do think that it's important to properly do assessments. I know we have a behavioral health screening, but and we have a classification screening, but I don't think we have integrated enough into the front end about how we're interacting with people. And you may recall, maybe you do, Christine, because you've been on this committee for as long as I've been on the committee. And that is that one of the goals we set early on was that we wanted to create an environment that concretely reduced recidivism and helped people have whatever services they had inside, we wanted them to have outside. Whatever services we didn't have enough of, we wanted to increase those services so that people would not need to come or would not come back into our custodial care. I mean, we really are trying to figure out how to put a crimp in the recidivism. And part of the reason, I'll just make one comment about the high need folks. What we're really looking for, and I'll just say this to the staff because you'll find the appropriate way to categorize this, is people who come in over and over. They're either violent when we have them in custody, or they're in because they were violent. I don't know, and we'll start there with the very high need focused work. So Christine, I think the question you're asking is such a good one, and one that the MOS group, I think, is really why we're engaging the MOS group, and a question that we should pose to them when they come back and report with our staff. Christine, did you have any other thoughts on that?
Not really, thank you. But I just think if we know a population from the get-go suffers from a particular abundance of something that's going to be so traumatizing, I think anybody in custody is traumatized due to being in custody, but particularly, that we know that women are victimized more frequently or found in the population more frequently, that it just be a focus of attention, I think, coming in, and that, we tailor the programs and the environment to the needs of women.
Right. And I think that I'm hoping that's where we get. I mean, that you just named, Christine, I think the goal that we have. Thank you. Miguel?
Thank you, Supervisor. And thanks for the presentation. Very helpful and lots of great ideas in there. But an idea I saw peppered throughout was the need for data sharing, which we have very complicated systems, and so data sharing is important. And the way we deal with that, because of the various laws and complexities there, is through consent. And it's great to see that we have a consent form. I read the report that's being vetted by county council now, so we'll get that in place. But I wanted to share that, of course, data sharing laws apply outside of custody, not just in custody. And we already had occasion to try and get these consents. And I myself was surprised when we piloted it outside in the non-custodial setting that only about half of the people who we asked for consent gave it. It wasn't just for women, it was, just the more general pilot that we undertook. And when we asked, well, why wouldn't you consent? We're trying to help, this and that. They said, well, we feel if we consent, and if I go to my primary doctor and they know that I have a substance use issue, or they know that I have a mental health issue, that they're not going to treat me fairly. They're going to discriminate against me. And so I say that to, it's a big learning experience for me. And as we approach it, it sounds like we are going to get consent forms. We are going to ask for consent, and I'll bet the same thing will apply in custody as out of custody. So I hope folks don't feel disheartened by that, but I feel like, what does that tell us? It's not for me to say, oh, if we don't get consent, we can't serve them. No, we just have to keep working hard to find different ways to serve them. For those that we can't share data with, hopefully we serve them better. But I say it to suggest that what's as important as anything is to, over time, build a culture of trust, that we really are here to help people get back on their feet, to get back in community. And I think if we can truly build trust in the services that we provide, people talk, word gets around, we're going to see that consent rate go up and up. We can share more data, we can be more successful. So I just wanted to share those observations. Thank you.
Thanks, Miguel. Erin?
Thanks. And I too appreciate the report and the attention that's being brought to the issue. But I want to, kind of speak the obvious, which we all know. The reality is that jails are trauma inducing and trauma triggering. So it's absolutely imperative that we only have the people in jail who really require that for community safety. And so one of the factors I would be really interested in with these high-risk women is their violence being driven by criminogenic factors, or is it being driven by behavioral health issues that somehow we have not been able to address correctly? Because addressing it in the jail is not the solution. And I don't know that we have the solution yet, but what does that need to be? And so I would be really interested in the answer to that, and be curious about the charges and the findings, to make sure that we're providing the right intervention to address it. Because based on the number of EPS visits, they're not engaging effectively. Somehow we're not providing the right level of care that they need.
Thank you, Erin. I don't know if any of our staff want to give a perspective on that, or if you know the answer to that broader question about, I think part of Erin, I think actually, Dr. Day, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think part of the work that we're trying to do now will elucidate more of that information, because I think even defining high need is going to help us drill in a little bit more to each person's case and better understanding the circumstances that bring them to us. So I think we're going to learn more. Dr. Day, did you want to add anything to that?
And I'll just say, just from the work that I've done in other venues, is that the presumption is that all of these women are traumatized. And so that providing care that is trauma informed and gender specific and gender informed is that we need to, on the bedside manner, on the healthcare side of the house, we are training to not re-trigger. And I can give you an example, for instance, when women go to the dentist, when they see the operatory of the dentist, we put them in a supine position. We put a heavy, covering over them for, protection from radiation. We do dental dams and open their mouth and put dental dams, and then we stick things in. A lot of the times we don't realize we're re-traumatizing women who have been sexually abused. And so those are the kind of trainings when we're providing on the healthcare side of the house, trauma-informed care, so that we understand how our bedside manner and things that we're doing that are customary under medical, mental health, or dental may not be re-traumatizing a woman who has been either sexually abused, physically abused, those type of things. And so that's the training on the healthcare side of the house for trauma-informed, gender-specific care. And when I'm saying care, I'm talking about clinical primary care and or dental care.
Thank you for that. Very interesting perspective. Mary? I saw Mary. Oh, you're on mute, Mary.
You're on mute. Okay, sorry about that. Hi, Supervisor. I did a small pilot kind of project back in the 90s in the main jail, looking at PTSD and PTSD caused by incarceration. And my thought at the time when I was meeting with the groups was to see if there was a way to provide PTSD and trauma treatment. And it was interesting what the men said to me at the time, and I recognize we're talking about women, but what they said was that some of the symptoms, like feeling numb, like sort of isolating, they found somewhat protective in an incarcerating setting. And they actually, some of them said that they were afraid to address their trauma symptoms while still incarcerated because of the vulnerability they would then feel. So it's just something I'm throwing out there. It made sense to me at the time. And the reason I had done the study was because I felt in substance abuse treatment, we weren't asking this question. We were not directly asking people about, at that time in the 90s, we weren't asking questions specifically about trauma. But since at the time I was working with correctional people, it made sense to me that if they hadn't been traumatized prior to going to penitentiary, they might be now. And I was right. They had a lot of them had the symptomatology, but they were scared to let some of it go. They wanted to get rid of the nightmares parts. It was interesting. They wanted to pick and choose. Like, I'd rather not have the nightmares. But some of it, they're like, I don't know. I don't know that I want to have access to all of my feelings. I don't know that I want to be able to, do you see what I'm saying? So I'm just adding that to the mix.
Yeah, it's
just based on experience.
Yeah. It's complex, and one of the things we don't really know how to do yet is customize.
Yeah.
Right. Wes? Wes, you're
I'd like to piggyback on what Aaron said and what Mary said. I think my 13 years in the jail and what one of your staff said, trust. Just take a look at COVID. How many people have gotten shots? How many inmates have gotten shots? None, maybe 40% or 50%. I don't know, but I know many people that I've talked to who I, here, they haven't gotten their shots. It's kind of like an oxymoron to obtain trust in when you're incarcerated, and that's a difficult job. And I think many changes have been made since I've been on the Blue Ribbon Commission in 2015. But nevertheless, there's a lot of work to do to gain trust. And again, what Aaron said about the criminality of it, which is working with them, the criminal mind or the vulnerable, traumatic mind. Which is it, and how can we determine that? But I think those are very, very good distinctions that she brought up. And I thank you for that.
Thanks, Wes. Damon?
I would just briefly add, and I think it's in many ways consistent with what Miguel had made comments about, Wes just made comments, and Mary, which is big challenge in the trust and the issue with trying to get to the root of this during a screening process is that people don't want to disclose this, certainly not in the early moments of walking into the jail. I do like to hear Dr. Day's comments about really basically operating under the assumption that these people have been traumatized and continuing to kind of revisit the opportunity and access to these services. I'll just throw one other comment out there, and I'm not sure that there is a easy solution to this, but we need to not lose sight that this is all happening primarily in a litigation context as well. Most of these people are predisposition, and the reality is well-trained attorneys go in and collect this information and use it against these people during the litigation. And so if records aren't meticulously kept, it's very easy to twist information and accuse people of malingering, exaggerating, and many other issues in there. And this is not to point fingers at one side of the litigation team or the other. It's just a reality that we need to be sensitive to, that the access to these materials is concerning for the clients because the vast majority are still basically litigating their cases, and the importance of mental health issues in terms of mitigating and resolving and disposing of cases. So I would throw that into the mix as an additional complicating factor.
Yeah, thanks, Damon. Matt?
Yes, and I'll lower my hand. Cindy, when you said, Chairperson Cindy, when you said customization, it hit home because I was really identifying with what Mary and Aaron were saying about how people really feel and the timing of it. And I'm sure that Sherry is on, or Bruce Copley either could give us a treatise on the distinctions between needs and criminogenic needs, and Javier could help me to understand. I need to be reminded on a daily basis the difference between supportive services and programs. A lot of what we would consider to be a supportive service, that person might consider really slows them down and keeps them from what they need to do to survive on a daily basis, because they have to go through our hoops. And so it's supposed to be individual justice with individuals. And I really think that is key. If we're able to look at that person and their timing and their needs versus their criminogenic needs, and what are ways we can support them. I think a lot of times we give people an overdose of the wrong things. We did some surveys and found out, I think it was actually Chief Garnett that pointed out that about half of the people said that they didn't need services. And we were still trying to bring them in. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think that those are all really excellent points. And colleagues, here's the staff did a good job of saying some recommendations about who would be taking leadership on what. I think one of the challenges with the high needs women program being taken on, the lead agency being reentry, is that it doesn't address the whole continuum. And I think one of the things that I've learned is that that when we divide up we are dividing this based on the way we provide services, not on the way our clients enter them, right? So what I would just request is that the Office of Reentry Services have a partner person, and I'll ask the sheriff to identify who that is. And I also think we need a lead from from county council as well, so that, and actually, Miguel, I'm going to look at you for just a minute, because the Office of the Sheriff and, Sheriff Smith, I know that you'll find the right person. It makes sense that the work you're doing with the Moss Group kind of leads into this work. Anyway, and Sheriff Smith, do you have one lead on the Moss work, or is there multiple leads?
I think that there's, obviously they're working with everybody, but I think that the one lead is Lieutenant Rowland, and I'll ask for Sepulveda's comment on that. But obviously they're in the facilities working with everyone.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, what I would just ask Sheriff Smith, the county exec's office, the district, I mean, and I think, Damon, your point, I think the public defender lens absolutely has to be in here, because we do have to be, we don't want to, our goal is really to help people not come back. Like, how do we do that? But in county council, I see Kavita, that I would just like to ask that the work group have leadership from each entity, and then come back in June to us about the right approach, specifically as it relates to the data collection and the continuum question. Like, how do we match what the Moss Group is doing internally to the work externally? I know we have a lot of folks who are in custody for very short periods of time. And so what you have all, I'm saying this to the staff, have always said to me is, you're developing a program for people who are going to be there for maybe a day. I think we also have to identify who we're targeting. We're not targeting folks who are with us a day or 3 days. And, so we're trying to figure out the right plans for people, the right support, so we don't see them again. And I think the point that Matt raised, that Chief Garnett raised about, I do think we need to prioritize and customize. I just think we have to get there. And part of that's going to be really based on how well we're managing people's information. Kavita, do you have a comment on this subject?
Yes, I just wanted to say I have really been inspired by the direction that this conversation is taking. I love the idea of adding both someone from the Public Defender's Office and someone from County Counsel's office to the group. That will be me for our office. Casey and I talked about this yesterday. And I think some of the difficult questions that we have to grapple with are the ones that you just raised, Supervisor, also the ones that have come out in this conversation. But so many of these projects involve balancing competing considerations and doing it in a way where we come out doing the most good that we can. So just as in the way that as a county government organization, we are often balancing competing considerations of transparency of government operations on the one hand and privacy of our clients on the other. A project like this is going to balance wanting to improve service delivery to get the best outcomes for our clients, and balancing that against their civil liberty to choose whether to be part of the program or not. So I'm thrilled to be able to be at the table with Damon and with all of those who've already been doing hard work on this program to try and get us to a place of even more progress.
Thanks, Kavita. Well said. All right. So with that, we're going to have a report back in June just to get an update on the collaboration, the team, and how we can address the continuum, again, given all the work that's being done with women throughout our custody process or public safety process. All right. We're going to move on to item 6. This is to receive a report from the Behavioral Health Services Department relating to the Jail Diversion and Community Awaiting Placement Program. And this is, as you probably all know, part of our annual report on work that's been going on. And we'll thank Judge Manley for his inspiration. And I am going to turn it over to Gabby and Javier.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Chavez and Reentry Network Committee members. My name is Gabby Olivares. I'm the Division Director for the Criminal Justice System of Care. And I'm here to do the first part of the presentation on our jail diversion efforts, and then I will be handing it over to my colleague, Javier Aguirre, to report out on the CAPS program. Next slide, please. So I wanted to report out on data period July 1st, December 31st on our jail diversion data. So first, what I will go through is the level of care, the program names, the length of stay of those programs, our total FY22 treatment slots, the number of unduplicated individuals that were served, and also if we're currently holding any wait list as of February 2022. So our first level of care is our non-intensive outpatient programs. We have our Bill Wilson Center, which is our in-home outreach support program. The average length of stay is 4 months. In FY22, our treatment slots were 120. The number of unduplicated individuals that were served was 150. We have no current wait list right now. The next program is Starlight, also our in-home outreach team, 4 months. Our treatment slots were 120. The number of unduplicated individuals served in that program were 46, and there were no wait list. Moving on to the behavioral health IHOT team, also average length of stay, 4 months, 120 slots. Number of unduplicated individuals served in that program, 53, and there is no wait list at this time. Our outpatient level of care, first starting with our co-occurring program that serves mental health and substance abuse disorders simultaneously. Average length of stay was 145 days. Total number of clients served in FY22 was 142. Number of unduplicated individuals served in that program, 197. No wait list. Moving on to our intensive outpatient program, average length of stay was 101 days. Number served for FY22 in terms of treatment slots available, 165. Number of unduplicated individuals served, 147, and no wait list. Our permanent supportive housing program, the length of stay is the subsidy in that program. 92 available slots in FY22. Number of unduplicated individuals that were served, 94, and there is no wait list. And lastly, for this level of care, our supportive transitional empowerment program, average length of stay, we don't have one, since that program works in custody and then transitions people out into community for connection. We don't have a defined number of treatment slots, and we received 70 referrals for that program, and 60 unduplicated clients were served and released into ongoing services for substance abuse, and no wait list. Next slide, please. Okay, so continuing on with our intensive level of care, our full service partnership, the average length of stay was 127 days. The total number of slots in FY22 was 348. Number of unduplicated individuals served was 461. And the current wait list at the time was 20. And you will see that there's an asterisk because this program also made concurrent referrals when someone was leaving the jail. Not only was a referral made to this program, but another program to ensure continuity of care once the individual was done with this program. So moving on to our full service, our intensive full service partnership program, average length of stay, 12 months. FY22 treatment slots, 400. Unduplicated number served, 543, no wait list for that program. Also, our community assertive treatment program, average length of stay 12 months. FY22 treatment slots were 200. Number of unduplicated individuals was 289, no wait list as well. Moving on to our forensic assertive community program, average length of stay 12 months. 120 treatment slots in FY22, 146 individuals served, no current wait lists. Moving on to our residential program that serves justice-involved individuals, our Muriel Wright Recovery Center. Average length of stay, 30 days. In that program in FY22, we had 30 residential beds and 2 detox beds. Number of individuals served unduplicated was 74, no wait list. Moving on to our substance use treatment services, our Triage Center, the Mission Street Recovery Station. The average length of stay is 24 hours, 3,600 services for 10 recliners. Unduplicated was 354 clients, no wait list. Next slide, please. So on December 14th, 2021, the Board of Supervisors approved our FY23 Mental Health Services Act funding increases. And those increases are as follow. Our intensive outpatient, 11 slots will be added. The funding source is Mental Health Services Act. The costs for those slots are $20,900 per treatment slot. In addition, we'll be adding crisis residential, 24 slots, but this treatment modality is actually going to be paid by the Department of State Hospitals. The cost per slot is $150,000 and $28,000 for medication to be accompanied with this treatment slot. Our full service partnership will be adding 50 slots, funding source, Mental Health Services Act, and the cost is $18,500 per slot. We're adding some additional transitional housing beds, 20 beds, again, being paid by our MHSA fund, and the cost is $18,202.84 per bed. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So behavioral health regularly tracks our success rates, and we meet every month with our treatment providers to review data, barriers, and solutions to yield high success rates. So July 1st through December 31st, 2021, 41.2% of individuals graduated from our diversion programs out of 699 discharges. I do want to clarify that the 58.8 individuals did not successfully graduate. Less than 5% of those individuals returned to the state hospital, transferred their case to another county, or absconded. Next slide, please. As we continue to have conversations with our justice partners, I just wanted to share some of the recommendations that our justice partners have made in terms of how best to work with this population. So we have seen that our incompetent to stand trial clients do require additional programming when they leave the jail. So the recommendation, based on our recent $1.4 million award from the Department of State Hospital, is to purchase more crisis residential beds to be able to meet the needs of this population. Next recommendation is to add what is called IMD Light, which is a level of care that is used in LA specific for justice involved populations. It's like a super RF residential care facility where treatment is provided, and it's done in a very holistic manner. So the recommendation is right now to continue to meet with LA, find out more information about this level of care. We'll be sharing our findings at the next AB 1810 meeting, and we're currently in conversation with a potential vendor that would be able to provide this level of care. Next recommendation, secure additional funding from the Department of State Hospital. So on February 7th, 2022, the Department of State Hospital gave us an additional award of $568,000. In our next AB 1810 work group meeting, we'll be discussing this funding and how best to allocate and spend this funding on our justice involved populations. Next recommendation, provide educational training to Superior Court judges on behavioral health's different levels of care to increase timely access to services prior to adjudication. So myself and some of my partners and colleagues had a presentation on January 4th with the judicial bench and reviewed our system of care and the different ways that our clients can access services. And we also explained the rollout of our referral form that can now be utilized by the public defender to ensure more timely access into our services. Next slide, please. So continuing with our recommendations, another recommendation is to assemble a behavioral health clinician team that can start serving clients at the Hall of Justice. So what we did is January 7th, we had a meeting with some of our justice partners, the presiding judge, pretrial services, the public defender, to discuss what's the best way for behavioral health to reach those courts. And so currently behavioral health is reviewing staffing resources to be able to expand ourselves to other courts and provide access. Next recommendation is to provide substance abuse groups inside the jail to ensure WARM's handoff into treatment. This is currently being done with our STEPS program, but we'd like to be able to provide additional groups to ensure that programming is started in the jail. Clients are used to the type of services that they will be receiving when they leave outside the jail, so that that continuity of care can continue. Next recommendation, training for adult custody health and behavioral health services. On December 7th, Dr. Warburton from the Department of State Hospitals provided training on 26.3 cases. And also yesterday, we had a meeting with Department State Hospital regarding additional housing funding that's coming to serve IST clients that are justice involved. And with that, that concludes my part of the presentation, and I'm going to hand it over to Javier Aguirre to report out on the CAPS program. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby, for that in-depth review of behavioral health side on the jail diversion. So next slide. So the next few slides, I'm going to be talking about our community awaiting placement supervision, what we call CAPS. And I'm reminded as we're celebrating 10 years of the Reentry Resource Center, 5 years ago, Judge Manley inspired us to create what we call the CAPS service. And then 2 years later, we made it into a program. So it's 5 years in the making as to what we are doing here with the CAPS service. So commend all the stakeholders for sticking through 5 years of this process. So just quick highlights. CAPS is a smaller process within the larger jail assessment coordination list review that occurs weekly. Those that are released to CAPS are usually those that are waiting long periods of time for treatment slot to open up. And we haven't had to utilize CAPS release often in recent years due to capacity being more available and releases, processes becoming quicker. And then prior to the most recent surge of COVID surge this winter, the JAC review and subsequent release of JAC list clients was working fairly well, with most people being placed on the JAC list being released within 2 weeks. And there have actually been some significant changes since this information was compiled, since this report. The month of March was a very busy month for the JAC CAPS team. There have been large number of releases from the JAC list in the past few weeks, and as a result, the bottleneck that has moved from custody COVID exposure issues to capacity issues. Next slide. So as of February 18 of 2022, there have been 39 CAPS releases since July 2020. There were about 33 possible successes, as 4 were in process at the time and 2 were discharged early. So about 14 out of 33 or 42% were successful. Those who were not successful tended to be those who failed to maintain contact and or missed their court date and received a bench warrant as a result. Next slide. So because of the recent changes, there's less focus on the logistics as a primary bottleneck has moved more to the community side. So that means capacity issues. So however, there's still opportunities to improve the release process itself. If we happen to have another surge where many JAC clients are being exposed to the virus, processes have been put in place to alleviate some bottlenecks and then just to make this process smoother. So with that, I'm also available for questions.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the public and see if there are any comments or questions from the public first. I see no hands raised. And I'll just say to Dave, you're with me there.
I'm here with you, and you have no speakers on this item. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go to Wes and then to Judge Manley.
I have a few questions. But I have a comment. I think this is a great program. It's very comprehensive, and it covers a lot of things that are needed. But I just have some questions to Gabby. Are all those programs that you pointed out, are they resident? They're not all residential programs, are they? That's one question.
Yeah, no, if you look at the level of care, it details it by intensive outpatient, regular outpatient, residential. We can send the slides out and you can see all the different levels of care that we provide.
Yeah, because housing is so important in this jail diversion. They really do need housing. And the other question I have is, how do you measure your outcomes and success? I mean, I heard a few statistics, like 58 people were remanded back to custody. How do you, what tells you you're successful? Like even Javier, you had 14 out of 42, but I really can't, comprehend, the whole picture of, are you being successful? And how are you assessing that? That's what I need to know.
Yeah, I think one of our biggest success is if somebody meets their therapeutic goals and can move out of a program. And then secondarily, are we able to work really closely with the supervision piece, like pretrial probation? Are we able to get someone, off pretrial probation? Did they complete their legal commitments? And because they are Medi-Cal beneficiaries, can we move them on to other levels of care, not just within the criminal justice division, but can we move them into the adult side of the world, where we really provide intensive care, especially the first 30 days. We stabilize people. We work really close with the jail. We go inside the jail. So a lot of our work is really intensive the 30 days, and it's really stabilizing people. Once we've stabilized them, working through their therapeutic goals, finding housing, employment, and then ensuring that connection is happening with the supervision piece, the court, helping people to get to court, helping them to get to the supervision officer, and then ensuring that those legal commitments are met, and then moving them out of our services and then giving them the full array of services that are provided through all the different Medi-Cal beneficiary services that we provide through behavioral health. So for us, really success is like, you didn't go back to jail, you didn't go back into a deep end setting. We worked on your therapeutic goals and we were able to move you out for you to have a successful life and not need us anymore. That is really success in giving someone the tools to be successful in community. And working with our partners to do that. And we're having to do that more to ensure that people stay in program. Some of our pretrial officers have gone to the treatment settings and met the client there, and just having those conversations. We're all invested in your care and we want you to do well. It starts from the inception of someone being in the jail. We get on those Zoom pads with the public defender pretrial and really circle around the person and let them know that we're there and we're your support team to help you navigate outside of the jail and ensure that you stay in program and that you're successful. That is really success to us.
Great. Those Zoom pads are great.
Aren't they? I don't have to go into the jail anymore.
Javier, that 14 out of 42, does that spell success for you?
I think in terms of success, we want to make sure we're meeting the client's continuum of care and their basic needs, whether it's access to housing, access to our medical team here at the reentry center, or access to getting linked to one of our county clinics, to making sure that they are making contact with their probation officer, and then the community worker that we link them to. So I think for us, identifying what the needs are of the client and making sure that we meet those so they could feel that they are succeeding and meeting those goals. The primary goal of CAPS is to get them linked into treatment. So while they're in the community and waiting for placement, we're trying to make sure that they are linked to those services. And then once they're linked to the behavioral health, whether it's outpatient or residential, the key is to continue to get them engaged.
Is it working though? I'm just saying.
Oh, absolutely. I think there are, we still have a constant challenge in communicating with our clients in terms of during the COVID situation and now. And, we're learning from our partners in terms of what the engagement is. We have a RFP to do pro-social activities to also link some of our clients to these type of pro-social activities to ensure that there are some services that they could also be linked to provide them with those goals.
My last question is: I gather that the new law that the governor is trying to pass, in the county supervisors passed for enforcing and bringing people outpatient into the AOT programs. Will that? I guess that will enhance jail diversion and bring more resources to you. Is that correct?
Are you talking about the care court model that's being proposed?
Yes.
Yeah, that is what we're hoping, that it brings funding, that we can build out further resources, that, prior to somebody really going deep into the criminal justice system, that we can provide those clinical interventions in a very timely manner, and we can give people what they need. And it's more prevention and intervention and not, what we're kind of doing right now, or a lot of my work is, once people are in the jail or the prison, then that's when I have an opportunity to work with them in collaboration with my partners. So we're hoping that we can start that at the earlier phase and that we could connect people in a more timely, seamless way instead of when people end up in the jail or the prisons.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Wes. Judge Manley?
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to raise the issue that, we continue to be concerned regarding the lack of sufficient treatment capacity. And I realize that the list apparently has been divided up into CAPS and then others. But what I have noted, and Judge Silva and I who work together on this, the number of individuals waiting in jail who have been ordered released is increasing, and it increases every month. We are now, as of today, with the individuals we ordered released today, we are close to 100 awaiting release. And I think what we need to do, and my suggestion is to really build out the infrastructure and the treatment programming that we need at the time we have an opportunity to draw down state funding. As Wes raised the issue, the governor and legislature, or in the governor's budget, they're making available billions of dollars to build out the treatment systems in each county. And I just suggest to you that what I think, and this is only my personal view, I think we are seeing the state moving more towards placing the burden on the counties to provide the treatment and services to these individuals who come into the criminal justice system. And I think what we really need to do is to take advantage of every dollar that we can draw down and compete for from the state. I mean, I really believe in the program in Los Angeles, the IMD Light, one of our when we talk about bench warrants, people dropping out of treatment. When you go from a residential setting immediately to an outpatient setting, no appropriate housing for the level of care and services you need, you're not going to do well. And that's why Los Angeles started this second program, which I think is really working. And again, that is going to cost money. I don't believe we have enough residential treatment in our county. We haven't had it before. We have insufficient, completely insufficient detox beds. If you look in the report, I think that there's a mention of 2, maybe there are 10. There are not enough. Detox is a very expensive level of care. I understand that, but we need to increase it because it works and it's evidence-based. I'm also very concerned that we do a much better job at engaging people from the jailhouse into the community. In my experience, those who go to behavioral health, mental health facilities, we will have an engagement process. Someone will come down and pick them up. Yet if it's substance abuse, that does not happen. And the problem to me is I would really like to eliminate this maybe sounds strange for me to say, but I really believe it, the CAPS concept of taking people out of the jail, putting them in the community in a shelter until we can get them into the treatment they were assessed for. That to me just doesn't cut it. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked. And I would really like to see us concentrate on increasing our treatment capacity and drawing down every dollar we can to build out our treatment capacity facility and address issues that they're very concerned about, and I think we all should be concerned about, is the workforce. I mean, we've got to do a better job at supporting our workforce in this area. And I really hope that we will do that in the coming months. But most importantly, I think this is a time once in a 50-year opportunity to draw down substantial state funding to increase capacity at every level, and I think we should take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Manley. Sherry?
Sure. Thank you, Chairperson Chavez, and just wanted to take a moment to thank Judge Manley for his comments, and also just share from the behavioral health perspective, we are taking every opportunity through whatever funding source is coming through the state to be able to apply for those funds and to continue to bolster and expand any of the services that we can. We have recently applied for behavioral health infrastructure dollars, and we're awarded, supportive funds to enhance our community mobile response efforts. We did recently apply for some funding for justice-related services, for which unfortunately we were not selected for funding. But just albeit to say, we are, taking every opportunity to apply for state funding to enhance our services. With respect to workforce development, you may be aware that we provided a behavioral health workshop at the end of February, and one of our really core and important strategies is related to workforce development and training and building the career pipeline, recognizing that there's a very severe shortage of professional availability of clinical supports, not only in our county, but clearly across the state. And so we're not only looking to enhance immediate and short-term opportunities, but really trying to build out longer-term plans and strategies around developing a career pipeline, working with local universities, and again, taking advantage of available state funds related to tuition reimbursement and loan repayment programs, so that one, we can retain the staff that we currently have who may have current and outstanding educational loans to keep them in the system, and two, begin to support students who have educational burdens and loans who want to be, providers in our system, recognizing that we can hire them and be able to offer those opportunities. So that's a very brief comment in response to your comments, Judge Manley, but all that to say, we're really taking advantage of all opportunities to enhance our services.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. And then Judge Manley, I want to give some feedback to your points as well. Go ahead, Matt.
Yes, the list has recently gone back up. However, I wanted to share, because I don't think that Sherry took credit, I'd like to thank Sherry and her staff for working well beyond their hours, because in November, December, and January, they got an average of 100 people released from that JAC list and got it down to about 2 to 3 weeks. Nobody had been in jail for longer than 2 or 3 weeks, which is basically not a wait, because some people need a few days to stabilize and then enter treatment. So now I think we have a different kind of group on the JAC list that Judge Manley is able to start to address that maybe he had not been able to address before. But it has gone back up. At one point, we had very few people on the list, and they've been on for a very short period of time.
Thank you. And could you maybe, Judge Manley or Matt or somebody, when you say we have a new group, could you maybe say a little bit more about who they are?
Looking at, and it was a quick couple of studies that I did, it appeared to me that the people on that list now have had more arrests and more opportunities at treatment than the group before, than the typical group before.
But it's very, very similar to where we were 5 years ago. I mean, I have not noted any dramatic change. Other than the pandemic, of course, the list went way, way down. But subsequently, I think we have to recognize that these individuals are, and we talk a lot about the trauma of jail, which, I mean, I completely agree with. We have to recognize that these individuals have great challenges, and they need an incredible amount of support, many of them, you know, and it's very difficult if a provider won't accept the client unless they're on medications and they're refusing. And, you know, we've gone over this already in this meeting, that individuals in custody often are very suspicious of, they don't want to sign consents, they don't want to do things. You know, we have to keep working on this issue. And to me, it comes down to really engaging with these people. I mean, today, and again, I don't want to keep reiterating, but the word trust, you know, it has been well demonstrated that if you can build a relationship with someone and sustain it, regardless of the number of times they're back in custody, if they have somebody that they can trust, you're going to see progress. I mean, I see it all the time when they build a trusting relationship with a case manager who will stick with them, or a faith-based program that will come to court with them. I think we have to invest a lot more in peer support programs that bring people with lived experiences into our system, working with those who are arrested. I mean, I think there's so many things we can do here working together, and I hope we do them. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Manley. I just want to make a couple of observations. I think, first of all, just on behalf of the county staff, I think that Judge Manley, the staff has been aggressively pursuing all grants available. And one concern that I've had is that at the state level, there are press conferences that say, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And there's $1 billion, and the state's relatively big. And when we look at what $1 billion means statewide, what we have access to here doesn't feel as significant. And frankly, one other concern I have about Care Court is, you know, I think the concept of it is fine. It looks very much like a kind of an AOT approach for folks who have schizophrenia or other kinds of illnesses like that. But there is no new money being attached to any of that work, and maybe a little bit for the courts, which I hope there are, because as you know, our courts are, you know, Judge Manley, I've talked to Judge Zahner and others just about how constrained the resources are for the courts. So that, you know, those are two very significant concerns that I have. The county, as you probably know, and well, anyway, and we're applying for a lot of money. I've spoken to, I mean, there's a lot of work that's going on, and I think there might be some benefit, Sherry, to the courts getting the benefit of that, understanding the direction that the county's trying to take on accessing those resources. The other thing I wanted to just ask is that this issue about increasing the timely access to services that the staff is looking at providing a training. Could you explain what the problem is we're trying to solve? This was on packet page 46, and it's the last box on stakeholder feedback. Gabby, I think this was yours.
Yeah, so we've actually rolled out our referral form, and it has 8 brief jail mental health screening questions. So if an individual isn't part of our collaborative core, doesn't walk into our reentry center, we've extended this referral form to all of our justice partners, so that the referral can be quickly filled out, sent to us, meaning, our behavioral health team, and we can contact the individual and just start the screening process over the phone and help that individual connect to services. So, we have a team we have a couple of teams in the collaborative courts, but if for whatever reason someone isn't part of the collaborative courts, or, the DA has someone that would benefit from services, pre-trial, we're kind of launching our efforts right now with the public defender's office. If somebody gets arrested Friday night, I can't go into the jail Friday night, but that referral can be triggered through our partners, and we can make connection as soon as possible with that individual. And, we've heard over the years, people don't want to walk into the reentry center. So we're just looking at different ways that we can reach our clients, whether it's on the phone, whether it's through another partner. If they're not able to walk in, we just want to provide that service over the phone. So we've had presentations with adult custody health, public defender, parole, pretrial, to ensure that there is access at all different points of care, whether they're just on supervision. One of the calls that I usually get is like, I have this person on my caseload, they're just kind of acting weird, I'm not sure what to do with them. So send me a referral form, we'll start that conversation, and we can start outreaching and engaging with that individual if they're not able to walk into reentry or they're not part of our court systems.
Thanks, Gabby. And the second question I have is, and this may be more for Sherry, could you illuminate a little bit on the expansion of Detox in the next budget cycle?
Sure. We had indicated and requested access or funding for social detoxification beds through American Rescue Act plan dollars. And so we're just having to look at opportunities to be able to build that out. As I understand, some of those funds may not be available to us as we had initially understood. And so we're looking at other options to be able to come forward with a request for adding, withdrawal management, social detoxification beds for our system.
So Sherry, another thing I would just request is that I would love to get the perhaps just send it out to the group, but the actual request during the budget process for the expansion of Detox in particular, and also medical detox. And now that I've understood a lot more about medical detox, I'm very interested in looking at what the percentage is that needs to be expanded on the medical side versus the social side. And I understand we do medical detox now for people who are in our, who are clients and patients, but I don't think that's widely understood, the access to it. And I think the way people get it is usually because they're in our emergency room, and then they then we support them through a medical detox. And I don't think that's the only path that it should take for somebody to move in that direction. So, and again, if we could get that before budget, it would just help me with my own assessment of, what I'd like to see in the budget.
Sure, we can do that. And I just wanted to say, Supervisor, thanks for making that differentiation, because I think sometimes the language with respect to medical detoxification services versus withdrawal management and social detoxification gets mixed. And so just differentiating the fact that the medical detoxification services are billable through the Department of Healthcare Services through primary health services and not through behavioral health, whereas the other beds are billable through behavioral health. So,
which is partly, and in fact, thanks for reminding me, because it would be the second question would be to obviously engage Renee in that, but I am really interested in the fact that we're doing it already. And then the real question is, how do people access it? So thank you.
Thanks.
Judge Manley and then Wes.
I just wanted to circle back to your comment about the care court. It may not be understood by everyone, but the proposal of the governor does include substantial funding, $1.5 billion for housing for this group of individuals and $10 billion to expand the infrastructure and treatment capacity in each county.
So Judge Manley, the thing I'll just note, and what I'll do, if you don't mind, is I'll have our government affairs folks reach out to you. Those monies were available separate and apart from Care Court. And then the Care Court proposal came forward. And I spoke to Dr. Mark Galley, who is the governor's medical, I forgot what his position is.
Secretary of Health.
Yeah. And Mark explained to me that those are monies, frankly, that we were already looking, because we're trying to house, as you know, the 10,000 people that we have that need housing in our county. And what I was hoping to see from them was actually a more significant expansion, even on the services side. But on the housing side, those are monies that were already available to us. So you're right. There's a lot of resources. We're working really hard to access them. But based on the discussion I had with the secretary, they're decoupled from Care Court, with the exception of the two areas I talked about, which was possible resources for the courts, which I think is really necessary, and some navigator support for the courts, which also is necessary. That would be assigned specifically to Care Court.
Right.
Yeah, but you're not wrong. He's putting a lot of money forward right now. You're absolutely right about that.
My point is, he's putting forth a lot of money. We ought to make every effort to get every dollar we can.
And I believe the staff is doing that. And if we're not, I don't know, Miguel, maybe Miguel, you can just say out loud, are we trying to get every dollar?
Yes, we are closely tracking every sort of opportunity, and we are making every effort to secure all the resources we can.
And I will say, Judge Manley, this is a discussion that I've had directly with Dr. Smith and the staff that's the lead on following the grant. So we want that resource to our county. So thank you for the reminder, as you always are shining light, focusing us in the right direction. Thank you. Wes, and then Sheriff Smith.
I'd like to point out that when I worked at the VA, we had medical detox, and I, as I recall, that the sobering houses do not have medical detox, and I would say that there's a need for medical detox in the outpatient area right away. Also, I recall the state of Utah has a alcohol program where people can stay in there and not be kicked out if they go off the wagon. And they recognize chronic alcoholism. They cannot cure it totally. And therefore, they keep their people. They don't kick them out and put them out on the streets for them to drink more. So I think they maintain their program. I would like to point that out to Sherry. And the biggest problem I think from jail to community is a long wait for trials. I've got two guys that I've seen who've been there for 12 years without, getting adjudication and either going to prison or getting out in the community. I think that's the biggest problem. They're not, if they're in jail for so long and then they get out, they're not wanting to go into any programs. They've been programmed enough. So I think we should look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff Smith?
Thank you. I just want to really, really agree with Judge Manley, because we're so fortunate in this county to have such a wonderful judge that cares so much and does so much for our people with mental health issues and other issues. But we talk about the JACK list, and for everybody that doesn't know, and I'm sure this group does, but for the JACK list are those that are in custody that are ready to be released as soon as a treatment bed opens up. And for it to be up in 100 where it was a couple of years ago, it went down over during COVID because arrests were down and activity was down. But there's not been any progress on this JACK list. We need a meaningful, and this is my soapbox, I always talk about this, we need a meaningful medical facility for people that have mental health issues. Furthermore, I believe that there would not be as many arrests if we had really, really good treatment for those with mental health issues, because a lot of the crimes that they commit are really a lot on because of their mental health condition. And for every time someone's arrested for one of those types of crimes, we have a victim. And I think that we can really, really prevent victimization with a mental health treatment. But let me also talk about, because it sounds like this is the two pots of money, homelessness. Jail is absolutely traumatic for women. We know that it's traumatic for all. But I tell you, the homelessness, the homeless people are just such high victim potential, especially the homeless women. And so not only do we need treatment facilities, a mental health hospital, but we also need some kind of movement. And I know there's been a lot of projects on this homeless issue. It's a travesty, and it's just a terrible situation for women to be in, and kids, and even men.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are all in agreement with you. And I one thing we haven't done for this group, but we might want to is just do a catch up on where we are with overall housing. Because I think, Sheriff Smith, the point you raised, it's such a good point, is it layers into so many of the different discussions that we have, no matter what committees that we're on. And to better understand, what we're doing in that area, I think is really important. And frankly, we have an overlap of clients that's relatively significant that is worth us, taking a deeper dive. Very good. Well, listen, I think this was a really very helpful discussion. I will just say that, I too am concerned about the increase in the number. I recognize and really appreciate, I want to say, Gabby, this was such a helpful report. And for a lot of reasons. One, it looked at numbers. So I actually understand what beds are available to this population and where we do and don't have waiting lists. I think one challenge that I just don't really understand is how to juxtapose between what Judge Manley is sharing and, in terms of, and Sheriff Smith, in terms of the number of people who are awaiting placement, and where we are with, if we don't have waits, how is the expansion working in a way that really knits all that together? I know that's not just an easy thing to say off the top of your head, but I am very interested in understanding that and would like to see that come back at our next meeting, so that we can see that total number, and the assets and resources we're bringing on, and where we are in terms of really getting that list down to zero. Thank you. All right. So with that, Sheriff Smith, you want to comment on this item again? Okay. With that, we're going to move to our last item, and that is my avatar. And I'm so sorry. I know these are rich discussions, which is why we put so much stuff on consent. But if I could just keep people's attention on item 7, and I think Brian Wagner is going to be our presenter on this item.
That's right. Good afternoon, Chairperson Chavez, Reentry Committee. Brian Wagner, Director of Analytics and Reporting for BHSD. Here to give an update to the Reentry Network around our My Avatar implementation, the electronic health record and claims platform that BHSD has been rolling out over the last couple of years now. So we'll move on to the next slide. Just to touch on our agenda briefly here, we'll talk first about our pilot. So we had one program, one CCP as we call them, county contracted provider, that was willing to volunteer with us to be our pilot program for a full integration. And so we've made a lot of progress since the last time we reported. We'll talk about that one. And then we'll go on to talk a little bit further about dashboards. So move on to the next slide. So a lot of progress since the last time that we reported to this subcommittee. The go live for our My Avatar implementation, our integration with the contracted providers began December of 21. So just 4 or 5 months, 5 months back. Just as a reminder, the county operated clinics had gone live on 9/1/20. So the county is using it as its EHR for BHSD and has been since that time, a little over 18 months, I think now. And so this was the final first test of our integration with our contracting providers. We went live with this large agency who was also on My Avatar's platform. We believe simplifying to some extent the go live process. And in December, we connected the direct integration between the county's instance of My Avatar and Momentum for Health's instance of My Avatar. So that was a big step and it was a good one. We spent December connecting those clients together so that the data would feed back and forth between the two systems. So an update in our system could be seen in Momentum's and vice versa. And then we moved on to, and so that's the phase 1 piece that happened in December. And the client mapping was completed during that period of time. Then we moved on to phase 2 in January, and that was for the claim submission part. So that's how we broke it up, was the client mapping piece in December, then moving on to submitting claims in January. So during both months and subsequent, we've had sort of daily meetings with Momentum between the county, BHSD, TSS, as well as the agency that we were integrating with and NetSmart. So claim submission began in January. Then we started working through kind of those sync issues and things that came up there to make sure that all that configuration was set up. And then we took February to do some reconciliation of outstanding items, to continue to process lessons learned and so forth, and continued to process through and troubleshoot items through till March 1st, when we effectively marked the pilot as complete, slowed the pace of our meetings, and began to kind of move towards more of a maintenance phase with Momentum, though there are still, there is still, continued items working on with them as well. Next slide. So in terms of our full CCP integration, just as a reminder, the total list is a little over 40 in terms of the number of contracted providers that we will be integrating with. And there is a variety of different ways, kind of 3 primary ways to integrate, and without going into a great deal of detail, but there is a direct integration where the client interface from our EHR is directly into their EHR. There is a web portal which is called PCNX, Provider Connect NX. And that web portal can be used to either integrate with automatic, kind of more automatic billing, the 837 files, the standard 837 claim files being submitted, or by manual submission of claims through the web portal. So there's a variety of different go lives planned essentially for each month, as we have been ongoing since February. So in March, we had a set of CCPs go live for the first time in PCNX only, so the web portal. And that was largely successful. The meetings have ceased with those providers. They were smaller, but yet they have claims coming in, admissions and discharges are going through, and so forth. So that it has moved to maintenance, and we're happy that we have a success under our belt for PCNX, the portal version of the go live. Since the submission of this, we actually did have a couple of small changes in April. Instead of 3 further go lives with Provider Connect Enterprise, which is that direct connection, we did move that. So we had 5 CCPs ended up going live, and that was on the portal again. So we had another 5 go live. And it was just this past Monday, the 4th, where we actually flipped the switch and had them start entering services. So again, those folks are meeting with our teams and kind of processing through that. And then the rest of the CCPs that we have are scheduled from May, kind of beginning of each month, May through September currently. We're striving consistently to endeavor to make September the last month to go live. Which would mean that sort of, it would be a month past that where we would have data kind of coming over from the whole system with at least a month's worth of data coming from all the CCPs, which would be around October. Go on to the next slide. We wanted to kind of continue to just touch in a little bit on dashboards, just real briefly here. Kind of an update on our key performance indicators. And so just as a reminder, the NetSmart product, my avatar, comes with key performance indicator dashboards. Wanted to make sure that we're providing as much clarity as we can. These are customizable dashboards. They're really focused on pulling the PHI right out of the system, and they're for internal use. So we have a dashboards group that meets on a biweekly basis where we're continuing to look at where the needs are so that we can have our staff and our leadership and our program managers and so forth access that data and create views of the data in a way that is internally useful to help make sure that we're monitoring for clinical and operational decision making that can be made within the system. And that is different than external facing dashboards with the KPIs that we have in my avatar. Those are not designed to be public facing, though the data, of course, could be extracted from my avatar to inform external facing dashboards if and as we have the approval to do that and data that we're interested in sharing. So next slide. And we wanted to just kind of revisit, these are some of the dashboards that we had previously presented in Reentry Network. And so really this is just demonstrating that the data continues to update from the system. This top one here, hopefully the details are not overly important as the writing is small. But the assessment count, that's the amount of integrated justice screening tools that were completed for the period that we grabbed right before submitting. And then we had our bed counts, our capacity counts for Evans Lane and the Reentry Center that we had created and presented previously. So those continue to populate. We revisit them from time to time in the analytics and reporting side of things to make sure that everything is functioning. And that's the update we have for the dashboards. And I think that's the end of the presentation. So I'm open to fielding any questions that folks may have.
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm going to first see if there's anybody from the public. And I'm confirming with the clerk there is nobody who has a raised hand from the public.
That is confirmed, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there any of my colleagues who want to make a comment on this area? So, Brian, I wanted to say just to you and your team, well done. I know this was something Supervisor Ellenberg was very enthusiastic about. I'm sorry she isn't here to get a chance to hear this presentation. It demonstrates very significant and real progress, and especially, I think, taking on the leadership with momentum, because it's such a large provider that really being able to dig in is so helpful. And frankly, the report, the details in the report over what you're learning is exactly what we need to make sure that we know if we're investing money in the right side of the programming. And I think this kind of goes back to a question that Wes asked earlier, that there's a lot of indicators here that will help us understand how to move the dial, both to address recidivism. But I thought one of the points in the report that was so interesting was the point about whether or not people go deeper into higher needs services or are able to step down. That's exactly the kind of stuff we want to understand. And so I just want to encourage you. I know that this in some ways is the most interesting and hardest to do. Like everybody just says, oh, make a dashboard. Like, why can't you just do it? And it's a little like asking me just to cook from scratch. There's just a lot of problems there with the request. So thank you so much for the leadership and the work you've done on this. And what I would just request is I'll ask my staff to make sure that Supervisor Ellenberg and her staff, they probably are here, but that they have a chance to dive into this, Brian, potentially with you offline, since she wasn't available today.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate this. I know these are long meetings. It's a big crew. These are really, really important issues. I want to thank all the staff who got us this incredible information. And even if we didn't discuss your issues, I just want to thank you for the reports. They were very thorough. I hope everybody has a blessed, safe day. And I think our next meeting is in the future, is what I was going to say. It'll be June 8th. So I'll look forward to seeing you all on June 8th. Thank you all. Be well and be safe.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Take care.